want. Yeah.
Doesn't matter to me. Whiskey, beer, vodka, whatever. All right, so we're going. We've got Todd Priddy and Mike Cook, winners of Gordon Steinmetz Bank Slate Classic. How you guys doing?
Not bad.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I should feel good after that win. It was a good win.
Yeah, long time coming. How long we been fishing it? 16. And
This is like,
go
I
ahead.
think this was my 15th or 16th try. Knocking on that, we've been both knocking on that door a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
Your partner there, Lonnie, I think it was
Knocked us
19. Yeah, we had right under 50 pounds, and I think Chad and Dan came in there with like 51, 52 pounds.
52.49.
That was
not that I remember.
That was a tough second.
Yeah. Anytime you put 50 pounds on the board, you don't expect to be, not running.
No, we had the perfect weekend, and it sounds like they had the perfect weekend last weekend. Well, 2 weekends ago. Yeah. They won by 8 pounds. There was overall like good numbers. I think we had like 32 pounds, which typically will get you checked, but not this year. I mean, there were some huge weights, but they were, I think, 8 pounds above it. I think Rick Sutherland got second, and you guys were about 8 pounds above him even.
There were some great weights day, even day 2, but day 1, there was freaking phenomenal weights.
Yeah, it looked like it. I was sad to miss it, but congrats to you guys. I mean, that was a heck of a win. So the big thing is whether or not you're going to give us lies, truths, or somewhere in between.
We always tell the truth.
Not the whole truth.
Hey, when you're good enough, it doesn't matter. You just go ahead and tell the truth. You're just better than everybody. It's much easier to be better than everybody else and tell the truth than to lie. So you were definitely better than everybody else.
Every dog this day, but like we talked about it. It was just a perfect storm. We've been knocking on the door so long. We kind of knew what we wanted to do going into it. We know what we do best, and we're not. I don't know. We know what we do best, and we just focus on it, and we're just threw the jigs in the right spot.
That's what I was going to ask. So were you guys trolling, jigging, a little combination?
We're jigging. Yeah,
I don't think that's any big secret.
Yeah.
We like to pitch, and I mean it's kind of tough to pull cranks and bait out of a 21-foot bass boat.
Sure,
it can be done. It was done.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've seen Jeb and Brian do it.
Todd's done it by himself in a tournament, and him and I did it a couple of times in the other tournaments. But for us in this one, it was a pitching game. It was we found the right fish, and they were just happening to gobble up the different baits we threw out, and we got lucky.
Would you say you found a pattern, or you found a specific area? Like, did you have a dozen different spots to cast in, or did you have one specific area that you really tore apart?
I think we had about 4 or 5 holes. Our hole number 1 Saturday did pretty well for us, but we were actually able to upgrade as we went, which was nice. That doesn't always happen.
And that's what's killed us in years past is not having multiple holes to go to. You beat up the same fish and sort them for 2 days. You know what it's like. You've been there. We had 4 or 5 good spots.
Excellent.
The one thing we did notice is each spot wanted a different bait, or at least if it was the same bait, they wanted a different fall to it or something. But it wasn't the same bait, which was kind of weird for us. But
now, were you guys pitching up shallow, or were you mid depths, deep?
That was the interesting thing was we actually caught them from probably the shallowest was about 6 feet, but all the way out to 21, 22 feet. And on Sunday, they had moved out a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it took us, Sunday was, we had a good lead, but it did take us a few hours Sunday to kind of dial that in and
quit panicking and start catching
and find them. So we both have collapsed on banks on day 2. We've had good day 1s several times and collapsed on day 2. And it was, I'll be honest, it was starting to feel that way to me. Sunday at 9, but we found them and got some good fish, and it paid off. But yeah, the depth, there was really no secret depth for us. It was really probably 6 feet to 21, 22 feet.
But the break you put the boat on was right, though. I mean, it was, you could cast one direction, hit one depth, cast another direction, hit a different depth, and it was the way you're putting the boat was pretty key, because we could pitch up shallow, and if they weren't there, you turn around and pitch out. It was depending on where we were.
Any specific color or not cover? Any specific cover you guys notice, was maybe more of a key to it? Pitching weeds, you pitching rocks, you picking timber.
I think current was essential, and we, looking for the fish, I think we were looking for weeds. There's a lot of them there, as Chad knows. But again, I think the fish we caught maybe were eventually or going to relate to the weeds, but they weren't really in the
or
weeds.
Had been in the weeds.
Or had been in the weeds.
But that's the other thing we both noticed is that some of the fish were just as pale as the day is long. It's like they had not been up sunbathing. They were still relating to the breaks, and I don't know. They were just, that's our theories. Like everyone's theory, a dark fish has been in the sun, and we got some fish that are pretty damn pale.
Yeah.
Now current, I think like Chad knows, as much as anybody, current on that lake is just key.
I would say there was more current this year than I've ever.
Oh, it was raging.
Yeah, and we're dealing with that right now. Like Kettle Falls is going to be very interesting because I live on Rufus Woods, and for the last week, I've been watching the flows. Maxed out on Rufus, and Kettle has still been coming up about a foot a day, and I think it's like at 1285, which is 5 feet under full. And I went up there last weekend, and I have never seen as much current as I've seen up there. And there's a lot of debris in the river, which there always is. So you definitely have to keep your head on a swivel up there.
Yeah, I think Kettle will be interesting. I think there'll be a lot of fish to catch. Hopefully their guy can get a few over 20.
Are you guys teaming up there?
Oh God, no.
We hate each other. We hate each other after that.
Between Fort Peck and
So who's fishing with who? Who's Mike fishing with up at Kettle, and who's Todd fishing with?
Tessio again.
Yeah.
Tessio again.
Are you fishing with Ron or Todd? Who are you?
Yeah, I fish with Ron. That's something we kind of think about too. Is I watched some of your podcasts, Chad, and I know you talked about it, but you fish with Dan typically, right? Repetitively from lake to lake or tournament to tournament. I think one of the unique things that I'm happy for is I've been able to fish. I fish with a different partner every body of water, but it's a repetitive partner. So I fish Kettle Falls with Ron, and Mike's the same way now. He fishes certain lakes with a different partner, but I think it's, for me anyway, it's been very helpful, right? You get a fish with a Ron Charlton and a Don Graham, and I grew up fishing with Jeb Race and Brian Coe, and I fish certain tournaments with Jeb, and I don't know how that fits into our conversation, but I think it is a little unique what we both do that way. And I've heard guys say those North guys are weird, they fish with different partners all the time. But I do think it ultimately makes you a better fisherman. So.
Yeah, mixing it up a little bit. I'm actually mixing it up. He's working this weekend. Hold on a second here. Who's ringing? Is that?
Yeah, that's mine. Just keep going because it's work, so I'm not going to answer it.
Okay. So I'm sure you know the Wheats brothers. I'm actually fishing with Aaron Wheats this weekend. So Kirk's fishing it also with, I believe, his son, but Aaron's fishing with me. And I don't think Aaron's been up there before. And I was just talking to Lonnie before we came on here, and regardless of, and there are huge fish up at Kettle, we just can't find them during the tournament. And I mean, feel free to let everyone know where they're at, because nobody can really ever find them during the tournament. It's been a complete head scratcher because come January, February, you see guys like Donnie Graham, Jeb, Brian. I'm sure you guys are catching these huge walleye, but none of us can seem to find them in late June. There's plenty of theories, and if you do run into one, you're going to win that tournament because there's a ton of small fish. But out of all of our tournaments, this is my favorite one because the scenery is unbeatable. But the fish will, whatever your favorite way to catch a fish is, you can probably use that tactic up there. Period. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of fish up there. And the big ones hang out with the small ones, as far as I can tell. It's kind of a crapshoot, unless you got a spot. Typically guys don't. Well, not typically, but every year there's a guy or two that'll run down south, all the way down to the arm or fish that area. And in years past, they've done it, and it's man, I tell you what, I just don't know that it's gonna. Right, I thought about fishing the Spokane arm the other day, and I'm like, why do I want to do that? So I'm not going to do it because I know if I went in there, I would find something that would make me want to run there, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not even going to pre-fish it. And if anybody does go down there, hey, congratulations, because that's going to be an expensive weekend.
Yeah, whatever you win is going to pay for your gas.
And we have a Calcutta again, I believe. I hope I read this right. It sounds like we're doing the Calcutta again this year. And I love the Calcutta. That's the best part of the Kettle Falls tournament.
Well, Chad, haven't you won Kettle twice? At least once.
Yeah. Terry and I won it. Dan and I won it. And then Rick beat us by a pound a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And I'll just say this. I fish Kettle once a year. I don't know what it is. I think it relates to Rufus Woods a lot. There's a lot of similar characteristics, or I've gotten really lucky. I don't know how to explain it. But I love going up there, and I don't have a ton of spots. I just have spots that have produced fish, and I think I've literally just been very lucky on where I fished, to be honest with you, because I'm due to have a really bad tournament up there. But every time I go up there, I feel pretty confident. There are fish everywhere up there, and if you can stumble upon the right ones, it doesn't take much. I mean, you catch a 23-incher up there, and that puts your bag right up there. I mean, it's been getting better though. 5 years ago, 30 pounds would win it, right? 5 years ago. Now probably need to hit 35 to 40, and who knows? Because there are nice fish out there. I don't know if we're figuring them out a little bit better, or if they're just getting, a little bit bigger quality fish up there. You guys would probably be more apt to answer that, because I don't really know.
Fish are disappearing up there, but I think that we're learning how to catch fish better
Right.
electronics, more knowledge. Well, things like the podcast. There's more knowledge out there. The internet has done wonders for guys. There's more guys know more places. Electronics are better. Just knowledge in general is better. But I think overall, the quality of the fish have been netted and caught. They're down. But I agree with you. The tournament number, the bag weights are up. But I think that's just attributed to what I was saying. I think that's just better electronics, better fishermen, more knowledge is out there.
That's the big thing, is just, people getting the knowledge on what's going on. Plus, you get these people that come up and, like me or Chad, we fish it once a year. So, we're relying on, and we've talked about this in the past about not fishing memories, but a lot of times when you're only at a place for 3 days, we'll get Friday to go out and look around and then fish Saturday and Sunday. We're going to go back to places that we knew had produced fish in the past.
Lonnie, are you fishing Kettle?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll be up there.
Good.
Yeah. Now, even though we don't do very good, it's like my partner and I said, it's just one of our favorite tournaments. Like Chad was talking, it has to do with scenery. A couple of years ago when he was doing Fish Donkey, my partner had never caught so many fish in his life. His arms were dead tired by the time we got done, because we were vertical jigging, and we must have caught probably 200 fish. They weren't big, but that was something he'd never done before. And he got done and he goes, this was probably the best weekend I've ever had. And, that's part of it. Yeah, we didn't finish high, but we had a good time.
You've had I know I saw you had some top 10 finishes up there, though. I think I was actually looking at last night. I was kind of looking at on their website, and that's where I saw the Calcutta was back. And I'm pretty sure. So 2015, Terry and I won up there, and I believe you were in the top 10 that year. So you've definitely done all right up there. And back then we actually had 60, 70 boats every year. Now we're really struggling. And I know it's going to be a struggle this year with, what it costs to run up there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. But you know what? To me, it's worth it.
It is. And, like I say, that place, it's really different. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but the scenery it's my favorite tournament, and it's not because of the size of the fish. It's just the scenery, and you should be able to find a spot to fish by yourself because there are fish everywhere out there. The guy that just runs into the right ones, he's probably going to win it because there are areas up there I've found that if you get in the right fish, there's some fat fish up there. I saw some really nice fish up there this weekend, fatter than I've ever seen, actually. They were pretty thick. So I don't know if we just got lucky and ran into the right group of fish, but I took a friend of mine that lives up there. He's an old, a veteran that fishes about once a year. And we went out on Saturday and we caught about 30 fish and we missed about 15 fish, had a good time. And they were thicker than what I typically see. Hopefully it, a week later it stays that way, but the water is definitely coming up quick, and that can really throw a curveball. I know one year Saturday they flowed real hard, and then Sunday they didn't flow at all, and that really changes things up there. So you still have to stay on your toes. But I think we're gonna have 2 days of high flow up there. I'm guessing. I shouldn't say. I really have no idea, but the way it's been flowing constantly for the last about 10 days. And coming up still, apparently there's a lot of water coming from Canada. So,
how was the clarity?
Oh, it's static now. They're keeping it 1285 and a half right now for a while. It looks like so. Water in, water out might still be flow, but they're not bringing it up at the same rate they were.
Let me I know I checked it yesterday, and it looked like it'd been coming up consistently a foot a day for about 7 days. So. And we were
June
at
1st, it was 1256. So between then and 20 days, it came up almost 20 some feet.
Close. I don't think it was there yet.
Right. I'll check right now.
It's the key up there is, like you said, there's great fish, but up there with the way that flow works on Saturdays and Sundays, you gotta change with those conditions. And,
how's the clarity looking? Is it pretty dirty or is it?
I haven't been up there. Honest God, I haven't been up there for a while.
No, it's clear. So the main river's clear. Of course, the Kettle River always puts out a tea-colored tannic water. So does the Colville, and most of them tributaries do. But the main river, it was very clean, but there was a lot of debris. I'm talking huge trees, and I'm sure there were some that weren't, just right on. So people are going to have to really. That's one thing in these tournaments. The guy that's riding with you really needs to, instead of taking a nap, really needs to look out for the guy running the boat, because I've hit wood up there. It can hide really good under a wave, and this is the time of the year that you need to be watching out. So just be careful up there, because there are, and it's the higher it gets, and Mike's right. It looks like they've kind of kept it at 1284 all day today. So,
they can still be moving a lot of water, but they're just keeping it static.
Yeah, and Rufus Woods is at maximum. They're spilling 250. So they're doing all they can. So it almost looks like they're kind of catching up now. But the flow will definitely not slow for this tournament. I don't see that happening. There's going to be flow like we've probably never seen up there. Now that may very well throw a curveball for a lot of the spots. Like my favorite spot, there was too much flow there this weekend, I thought. They probably still fish there, but it just felt like it was too much to me.
How are the tributaries running?
They're flowing. The Kettle, I went up the Kettle and it was ripping. I will say this, the water in the Kettle was way colder than the main river. Way colder.
It wasn't chocolate milk. It wasn't all blown out.
No, it was just tea colored, you know. But the Kettle was, this was Saturday when I ran in there, and it was under 50, and the main river was over 50. You know, I think there was about a 3-4 degree difference in the Kettle from the main river.
Yeah, that's a huge difference last year.
Like we found in banks.
Yep.
Yeah, because I know last year, I think we were up in the Kettle. I think we had water temps that were 69, 70 degrees.
Yeah, not going to happen this year. I can't imagine it's going to come up. Yeah, no way it's going to happen. Yeah, I think it was 49 degrees in there on Saturday, and the weather this week is starting to climb up, but probably not enough to. Yeah, it's definitely not going to be up that high.
So here's a question for you. You know, obviously not getting to fish that area much. I know down lower by the Snake, Hot Creek, things like that, in the summertime, we'll catch them suspended. Is that something that you can look for up there?
You can look for it. Finding it might be a different deal.
You know, yeah. I think
we've all dabbled with it later in the summer. I don't know. Honestly, I haven't tried it too much this time of year. I'm looking for breaks, and you know, Michael and I did pretty good the last couple of years, but putting it together on Sunday, like we said earlier, you've got to have 2 days of the right conditions and make the right changes to make things happen. Last year, that flow changed on Sunday. We recognized it just a little too late. The old 6-feeder. A couple of people beat us to the punch. And,
Lonnie, I'd say the suspended bite, just from, you know, obviously talked to Ron and Don a lot. And they live there, right? They fish a lot up there.
Mm-hmm.
And as you guys both know, I mean, we call them Team Moses, but back in the day when they would actually come up and fish that thing, I mean, Chad probably knows, but I mean, Phillips, I think, has been day one leader a couple times there. Brandon and Seth have had pretty good bags. It seems like that suspended bite, like you can have one good day, real hard to put 2 good days together. I mean, there's been 18
cups or championships.
Those were gun cups a couple times. Yeah, 18-pound bags day 1 and 0 day 2. You know, so the guy that gets 10 and 10 or 11 and 11, this is back in the day. You know, squeaks ahead of them. But my opinion, that's pretty hard to put together 2 days on that suspended bite up there. But if anyone does, they're going to blow the tournament out of the water. You know, so that's my opinion on it.
Gotcha.
I've never found a suspended bite up. Well, not entirely true, but you know, I guess it's how you define a suspended bite. You know, the fish up there will come up high for a bait, but so the year that Rick won it a couple years ago, Sutherland, day 1 we were catching them shallow on a break line, and on day 2 they completely disappeared, and we started pulling cranks out right on the break line actually, and I guess you could call that a suspended bite, but we were kind of right on the break line, and it seems like they did move off of where they were feeding to the same depth out in about 20 feet. So the fish were at about 10 feet, but they were basically right on the break line. So while that is a suspended bite, it's not what I typically refer to as a suspended bite out in open water. Yeah. You know, but we definitely, you know, that year Rick won it, we were about ready to bail, and he actually bailed. And right when he bailed, there was a big wake that he made when he left, and he said, "All right, we'll see you guys later. We're out of here." And as they were leaving, one of our planer boards, I don't know if it was from the wake that he created or whatever, but we'd had a really tough day. We'd caught some 16, 17-inch fish, you know, whereas the day before in the same spot they were 20 to 22s. right when he was pulling out of there, one of the boards went back and it was a 27 incher. And I still like, was that just a complete coincidence, or was it was a flat calm day, or was it from his wake? So we actually started pulling that brake line up high, and like I say, that is a suspended bite, but it's not what I would typically describe a suspended bite. In my opinion, is usually out in open water, But these fish were just not going way out off of the brake line; they were right on the brake line, maybe 5-10 feet off, and then we started catching them, and it saved us that day. But I've seen guys out in the middle of the river pulling cranks in 100+ feet of water, and I've never caught one out there. And it makes you scratch your head, like, are those guys just killing it out there? And those big fish are probably doing that, but running into them and finding them
2 days
in the same spot that you did the day before, that's the problem. Like, you could catch a 28 incher out deep and don't expect it to be there the next day. I don't know if they just caught that fish randomly going through, but I certainly wouldn't recommend trying that, unless you want to win it, is what I'm saying. You could zero on that bite very easily. But if you're looking to go up there and have fun, I wouldn't try that, because it could be a very frustrating day, long day. But that's one of those bites that if you can figure it out, like those guys said, I mean, you're going to probably win it. I know Brad Phillips and those guys, matter of fact, the year that Terry and I won, Brad had a big 17-pound bag on the first day. And we actually weighed in an hour and a half early because we had some battery issues. And we stumbled into a 31 incher that day, and it wasn't suspended. And this was my first time going up there, and we went and weighed in right away because we didn't want to lose that fish, and we didn't want my boat to not start. This was my little boat, and Brad, we were so nervous because Brad had 17 the first day, and all he needed was a 12-13 pound bag, and then the Romigs, which they always do good up there, and then of course Brian and Jeb, who always do good up there. And luckily that suspended bite, which I'm assuming Brad was on, I don't actually know, went away, and he caught, I think, 1 or 2 fish that day. So that bite
it was suspended bite.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I figured. And I know that bite can frustrate the heck out of you one day, because it's tough to recreate that bite. And I know I think do you know the Good Nights? I don't think they fished it. I believe they won it once on a suspended bite too, is what I'd heard. And I think they've won it a couple times, maybe, or at least been up there a couple times.
I think they have won it twice, Kathy and it's Greg and Kathy.
Yep. So there's some really tough locals up there.
Do you think that suspended bite has everything to do with water temps, or does it have to do with flow?
Yeah, I think it has to do with bait, to be honest with you, with what they're eating.
Bait.
I think, personally, I think it's rainbow, little rainbow. But when it's in there, I can think of a couple areas, they're feeding on. And you talk to, this is typically later in the year, but you talk to, Graham or Jeb or Brian Cole, people who go out for fun and try to figure that bite out. It sounds like you'll catch it. If you're in the right spot, you'll catch a lot of rainbow, but it'll be, you're almost getting irritated pulling rainbow off your boards, jumping and destroying your cranks. And next thing you know, it boom, and you're like, dang it, another rainbow. And it's a 30-inch fat walleye, But I think that bite tends to develop later in the year, right? That's my theory. You might get some now doing it.
I think it's better later.
Better later.
Whether it's the bug hat, fish are following, or
I guess that's kind of the thing that's unique to, as far as kettle goes, at least that I've found. I mean, we've caught them, tight to the bank in a foot of water, and then we'll be out in 30 feet vertical jigging and catch them. It's like,
I got a question for Todd and Mike.
I think kettle's the hardest tournament, if you want. That's my honest opinion on it. To win that tournament, I think consistently, and hats off to you, Chad, for doing it twice. But That's
Thank you.
just from what everyone said.
The conditions change just so much. It's just so
And
tough
you
to
can
stay on
catch
fish
them on
2 days in a
anything.
row.
So it's really hard, right? If they're only biting worms, right, and everyone's out there pulling bait, it's kind of obvious. Well, I better pull worms, you know. But at that body of water, you can jig, pull worms, throw swim baits, pull cranks, pitch cranks, do, you know. And for a guy to put all that together and win that, and plus the sheer volume of water there, like Chad was saying, go down the Spokane Arm or all the way up the Canadian border. I mean, to me, that's the toughest one. But anyway.
I can't imagine how much water's flowing right now in that little narrow spot. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Oh my! It's got to be
raging. It's got to be just.
Yeah.
Even if, you know, like I said, they're keeping it at 1284, 1285 right now, it's just static. So if they're pulling that much water through Rufus, that means they're pulling that much water into the lake. There's that much current. That's just got to be a blast up there right now.
I got a little tip I'll give somebody. I don't know if this is completely inaccurate or not, but I've found on Kettle, if you can find big smallmouth bass, you need to fish that area. Would you guys agree with that? Have you ever ran into that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we both have, and I would agree with you, Chad. Would agree.
But it is hard because right before in 15 when Terry and I won, and I'd love to tell that story about that fish, but every time I tell it, we were really lucky to get that fish. But right before that big fish, I caught about a 5.5 pound smallmouth that the entire time I thought was a big walleye. And it was so depressing when I saw what it was.
It was staying down on you.
Absolutely. And it would, and for sure, I thought it was the fish that we needed. So it was just a huge gut punch. And it wasn't 2 minutes later. And I hooked that 30. We never weighed it. We weighed it, but we never measured it. I figured it was a 31-2 because it was like a 10.1, I think, 10.12, I think. And so right after that big smallmouth, I hooked, and it felt the exact same way. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. What are we in big smallmouths? And all of a sudden it came up nice and easy. But once we saw it, it dove and it ran like a muskie. And this was at about noon on day 2. And we were in like 8th place on day 1. So we were kind of out of it to win it. But when we saw that fish, we're like, are you kidding me? Because a big fish on Kettle Falls in this tournament's a 5-pounder. We saw this fish and we're like, oh my God. And I have never been as nervous as I was that entire time. And it went down and it ran for about a minute. And I was losing my mind, just waiting for it to feel it, because I saw that it wasn't hooked good and I was just waiting for it to pop off. You know, it's just, you can't help that thought goes. It's just human nature. And I'm going to throw Terry right under the bus. Right under the bus. He's not the greatest net man ever. He goes to net that thing and this was on a crankbait, and he gets the fish, the crankbait on the net, and the fish is on the outside of the net. And that fish just sat there and it froze. And I'm like, oh my God, what? And I grabbed the net and I flipped it over and I pancaked it in the boat. And the hooks actually ripped out of the fish, or out of the crankbait. And the fish fell on the floor, and I gave him a punch in the shoulder, probably harder, celebration, but a little bit of what the hell was that in the shoulder, because I figured we just won the tournament. I mean, I'd been looking at the stats for the last couple of years on, what big fish was. And I knew that was a 10-pound fish. And I was just like, oh my God. And, but my whole point of that story is, if you can find big smallmouth in that river, don't leave it, because big walleyes are probably there too.
I would agree. Yeah, I would definitely agree with you.
So what is it you guys are looking for up there to be able to, even put a pattern together? Are you, obviously you said you're looking for a certain, type of current, or, the break lines with the currents?
I'd like to find weeds, but this year I don't think they're going to be probably non-existent. Good weeds with current, just pretty simple, good weeds with current. But it's going to be pretty hard this year. So this year's going to be still. I mean, the key word we keep bringing up over and over is just current, finding those right fish in the right current conditions, and
Well,
the right current.
if the conditions hold the way it is right now, let's say they don't raise it anymore, so we're going to be what, about 5 feet lower than it was last year? So it was about 1290 last year.
I don't remember.
That's the big question mark. I mean, we don't know. I mean, how do we know? I mean, we don't. I mean,
You look at the projected tables, but they're, what do they say? Their projected was 1286 over the weekend.
So,
for our tournament, you said I've actually never seen that. I just look at the daily flows and try to make my own judgment.
1285.53 through Saturday and Sunday. And right now, supposedly it's at 12. So it's only 1 foot difference. 9/10 of a foot difference from right now. So, but that's projected.
I would say that's typically where it's at for the tournament.
I think you're right.
Yeah, last year it was high. I mean,
very high.
Yeah,
very high. Yeah.
so how much of a play is that when you go, okay, so it's going to be 5 feet lower, give or take, a little bit lower water compared to last year. But last year, I don't think we had the flow either.
We did on Sunday.
No, Saturday, man.
Sunday we had flow too. That's what we didn't recognize the flow quick enough, and that's how you two fuckers, you and Donnie, were smart enough to catch up on that. And
Chad, you were telling the story last year was the fish donkey there at Kettle.
Yeah, we did it for 2 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did it. I ran it in 2020, and then the Lake Roosevelt Club ran it in 2021.
Oh, Ron and I in the bass boat, whatever we were. Let's say we were 8th or 7th or something day one. Decent day, not great. And we went to our first hole, which was actually north of the launch there. It's interesting thing about the fish donkey. Anyway, that hole wasn't producing, and I think it was probably like 9:30 in the morning. We had a pretty good hole down in the Spokane arm, and we went. We left and ended up paying off. We took second. It didn't pay off perfectly, but that's
not for me.
This year I would never do that because you're losing that fishing time, right? I mean, I knew I wasn't going to have to drive for an hour or an hour and 15 minutes to be back. So not only gas prices, but that is one thing I did like about the fish donkey, that you could, fish right up until whatever the time was, and as long as you were time stamped, you were good. So
Yeah. So is that pretty common for a lot of people to run that far south?
I don't think so.
Not anymore. Back when there was, Bob Plouffe, I think over the years went down there.
You and I made the run.
I made it
all the way to the dam. Yeah. $279 one way, and that was in 2013 or 2014.
Donnie Graham tells us, this was before I ever started fishing tournaments. I don't know if you heard this, Chad, but they used to run that tournament out of Two Rivers. And he talks about a year. He talks about a year that every boat in the field, this is back when they had, the big numbers, ran all the way up from Two Rivers, basically up to Kettle. Like he said, over half the field. Well, now you have, turn them out of Kettle and everyone's trying to run away from Kettle. So it's just
north,
it's just interesting.
That's human nature. It feels like. I honestly have no idea where you guys fish. That I've heard rumors, but I have no idea. But before we moved to the other end of the lake, I never fished the north end of Banks Lake, and we always did really good on the south end. And ever since they moved it to the, now this year we went back to the south, and guess where we ran? All the way north. And I'm pretty sure if we just would have stayed in our normal 2014, 15, 16 spots on the other end of the lake, we would have done better. It's just like you always feel like you need to go a long ways, and I don't know how to explain that, but you always kind of feel like that way.
Kettle, there's a lot of lake, and that's kind of the cool thing about Kettles. You want to fish structure, there's structure. You want to fish rock, there's rock. You want to fish, bass sand flats, there's big sand flats. You want to fish raging current, there's raging current. That's kind of the beauty of Kettle. Like you said, the scenery is unbelievable, but fish to your strength. You want to
Yep.
pop jigs? You pop jigs. Find a good spot to pop jigs. You're a crank puller. Go pull cranks. It's got it all.
Yep. Absolutely.
Row is a different story, but
Yep. Jig wraps. I've done really good out there with jig wraps. There's not a tactic I can think of that I haven't done well up there. And you can catch a ton of fish. You just got to find the right. A 2-pound fish at Kettle is a boxed. That's a good fish. A 3-pound fish is like, heck yeah. And then you just got to find that 4 to 7 pounder, and that's a 30-incher as far as Kettle goes. But I do think one of these years somebody's going to just absolutely blow everybody away. It's just nobody can seem to crack the code up there. I keep waiting for one of these locals like Jeb and Brian or Todd or Ron to just win by 20, 25 pounds. But nobody seems to know where these fish go, these big fish, because there are definitely teener fish in Lake Roosevelt. There's huge fish out there. Why the heck none of us can figure it out. I have no clue. They're out there, but they're just not in your typical spots.
Where do you think they go, Chad? Do you think they're out in the middle?
I do. I think so. I mean, I think more. Yeah, I think your trout analogy is probably those things might eat once every 2-3 days. Those big fish, because there's some really good fishermen up there. I mean, I've always thought that Ron and Don are the best in the state. So ever since I moved here and I started, Gordon told me that these are the guys you need to learn from, and they consistently show whenever they fish that yeah they are. But those guys haven't figured it out. I'm sure that I know they've won it. I'm pretty sure they've won every tournament out here. I know that.
Ron won Kettle in the 2000s. Yeah, somewhere in the 2000s. I think Donnie's won it 3 times. At
least 3 times.
Yeah, maybe 3 times now.
Last year.
But you're right. They're 2 of my.
All right. He so last year it was Donnie. Yeah.
Last year.
Who fished with him last year?
They fished together for.
Yep. Okay.
What are they both in their 70s now? So they both 40 years. No, they fished together a long time. They fish well together.
And there's some other locals up there like Ken House. He always does good. The Phillips.
The McKerns are dangerous.
The McKerns. Phillips. There's a bunch of locals up there that can expect to win. If you look back at the last 5, 6 years, out of all of our tournaments, the most consistent names are at Kettle Falls, and it's like I say, Ken House, you guys, Ron and Don, and Jeb and Brian. They've won it twice in the last 5, 6 years, so they have definitely got it figured out. But still, nobody can find where them giants seem to hide.
And it's different every year.
It is.
You go at the big bite where everyone's fishing up north, and the other you go down south, or many times everybody knows it can be won within the damn side of the boat launch. You can win in the Colville, you can win it across, you can win it up in Singer Bay. You don't have to make. I guess that's another thing. You don't need to make the big runs. That's the fallacy that we like when I was with the Spokane Walleye Club. We hear all these, the big boats and the big electronics. Now you guys can run 1,000 miles. We can't compete. Well, Kettle Falls is a perfect example. You don't need to run 1,000 miles. You run down to the Colville and win it.
Yep.
Go in Singer Bay and win it. Run up into the Kettle and win it. There's big fish close by. You just find them.
Yeah. What's that run take to go even down to the Spokane Arm? You said about an hour?
We were over an hour.
Yeah.
We were
cruising.
And I was doing 58, 59, just cruising down through there.
You have to fill up on the way back?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the McCoys are at the
Fort Spokane.
Well, we ran down over the Colville. We ran to the spine, and it was an hour and 27 minutes when the skeeter used to run fast, and it was lighten up the boat and go down there and win it. And we lightened up the boat, went down there, and went, there's no flow, like zero flow. That kind of sucked.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh, yeah. It was. I fished down there all week with Kruth, and we were just whacking giant fish, and it was fun. It was epic. And then I didn't realize that the hydroplane races were that same weekend, and I didn't put two and two together that they slowed. I guess that was the championship, not the Gov Cup, because they slowed the flow down for the championship, or for the hydroplane races. I didn't know that. I talked Ravenio into spending a lot of gas money to go down there for nothing.
What do you guys think, bringing that up? What do you guys think? You know, there's a couple years they put borders on it.
Yeah.
And I go back and forth on and I've heard great arguments both ways. My older brother Ken has I think a pretty logical argument that, you know, our numbers are down and what we need is more of the local guys in the 18-foot boat with the 50-horse tiller, you know, to come back, and those boundaries would make them want to come back more.
Or maybe be
but what do you guys think? Yeah, what do you guys think about the boundaries?
And not just boundaries. What's your opinion? What can be done to bring these guys back? Because we need them.
Yeah, you know, it's honestly, my opinion is, I think a lot of it has to do with, like Chad and you guys were saying, there's a lot of the same names that seem to win the tournaments, or at least are up there, you know, to win the tournaments. Now that also has to do probably with the number of boats that we have every year now. But, you know, I've talked to a lot of people that want to try to fish them, but they're scared about the money, you know, and that's the thing.
Money, the buy-in, you mean?
Yeah, because, you know, let's say they've never fished a tournament, right? So they don't want to go spend $500 to enter a tournament and then have to spend $300 in fuel, you know, $300 in a hotel. So, you know, they're looking at, you know, a $2,000 weekend just to get into it. I think a lot of it could be maybe mitigated if you were to maybe have some lower cost tournaments, maybe that don't have to do anything with the circuit, but at least to get people involved in it and to see, okay, hey, this is what this is about. And, you know, I know a lot of people want to make money, but it's like we've talked about before, the boat entries that we have, you're not making money, you know? So that's my take on it. And maybe the borders would help. Maybe you have some smaller tournaments with borders so people can get a feel for it. You know, I mean, that's an option.
And Ken's right. We need to bring back the guys that used to be there, the
Yeah.
weekend warriors, so to speak, the locals. Make it a fun event, make it a family event, make it a weekend event, but make them feel like they can compete. Because I know it's something we talked about at the Spokane Club. You know, we had our little questionnaires and this and that. It was they feel outboated, you know, outgunned motor-wise and out electronic. You know, all these guys with these big boats, you know. And I admit it, I'm the same way. I look at Chad, and he must have, you know, 12, 16-inch screens in his boat. You're like, Christ, I need that. Or, you know, the guys with the Nexuses that pass the skier like it's standing still. I'm like, God, I need more horsepower. Right? It's I want. Well, you know, there's guys out there that, well, like Chad and Dan, the year they snuck in there and beat us at Banks, you were fishing out of your small boat. You don't.
Well, that's the thing. When you're in a small boat, it's a weird. So I have went from a 50 horse in my 16-foot Lund to my new boat with a 400 horse. When I was fishing out of my little boat, I always felt like I am going to beat these guys in their 200, 300 horses. I'm like, I am going to beat their asses with my little 50 horse. So now I got this big motor, and I'm like, it puts a different view on it. Like, well, I have no excuses anymore. Back then I had excuses because I had a 5-inch hummingbird on my little boat and a 50 horse. So I had tons of excuses. So I fished carelessly and it worked. Now, this is the worst year I've ever had with my great boat.
Sure, there's something to that. Like
you know, and now I have no excuses. It's all on me, right? So, you know, that setting up borders, I don't really agree with, because you still got to catch the fish. And if a guy wants to run 2 hours and only have 2-3 hours to fish in the day, he's putting a lot of pressure on himself. So I wouldn't, if somebody wants to spend that money to run, that's fine. Good for you. That's a gamble too. Like Mike said, things can change. So I don't think putting limits on where you can run is you know, and I'm wrong a lot of times on my perspective on tournaments, but I'm just saying, as someone that went from a 50 horse to the biggest motor you can put on a boat, I don't think that's the problem. You know, just because you can't run like these guys doesn't mean anything. You can still beat them. I did it.
We got to get that point across, because it has to be something, because it was brought up over and over to us that all you guys with these fancy boats, I mean, it was over and over and over, all you guys with these fancy boats, the horsepower and the graphics, we just got to, or the graphs, excuse me, so we just got to get it into their head that then don't miss the fish that are there, or you don't need to make it, like you just said, let those guys make the big runs, get it into their head that they make those big runs, they're getting less hours on the water or less hours fishing. You're getting more hours. Just, you know, make them feel, help them to feel competitive, I guess. You know, if that's how they feel, well, then what do we got to do to bring it back to the tournaments? Is it less buy-ins, which means less payouts unless we find some sponsor money to help offset that, which, you know, there's different ideas. There's a lot of different ideas. You know, what, like Ken and Todd have been here, you know, I swing by their office pretty often, and they've been talking about something, you know, maybe instead of one group trying to make every tournament great and they're spreading themselves thin, maybe a group of guys that feel passionate about Kettle, like the Kens and the Todds and the Rons and Dons and Bretts and Jebs and me, concentrate on that tournament. What can we do? Each one of us bring something to the table to that one tournament, make that one tournament good, make it fun again, make it an event, you know, a weekend event. Look at Kettle, like you said, Chad, you go up there and it's a town event. I mean, they do the weigh-ins at the docks, but then all the boards, everything up at the park, and then, you know, it's an event.
Right.
And
the Calcutta is my favorite thing.
The Calcutta is, you know, that's a huge deal, or at least it was. Maybe some of us do that for Banks, and then, you know, the Southern River guys do that. You know, they don't have a problem down there, but maybe they concentrate on the lower rivers. And if we could find a group of guys for each body of water that are passionate about that body of water, and they have ideas on what they can do to that body of water to make it a better tournament, maybe we can bring back some of these locals. And remember when Phillips was out there in a little boat in Moses?
Yep.
You know, he was out there and he was kicking everybody's asses, a little boat.
Well, when he won Kettle, I remember he was in his old boat, and he's got a new boat now. Yeah.
Or look at Dave Harrell right now. Dave Harrell enters a tournament, and it's just like, I might as well just write him a check. He ain't running no 20-foot boat with 350 horses. He's just out there catching the fish that he knows are close by and don't need to make big runs. We just got to let the guys know, the locals know that however we do it, you don't need the big boats. You don't need the big electronics. You know, if that's how we want to spend our, you know, disposable income, that's fine. But you don't need it to win it.
So when you guys were getting 70, 80, 90 boats in the tournament up there at Kettle, was it, let's say, 50% locals, or was it higher?
Oh, yeah.
From Deer Park to Spokane. From Spokane up, I would say there was.
Lonnie, I think you have what we always talk about. I think I've heard you guys say it. I mean, now we have, 50, 60 guys that go from body of water to body of water, right?
And you might get 40 in a tournament.
What we call them is tournament guys. And here's, I guess, the thought process that we're having on our tournament circuit anyway, is that those 50, 60 guys are going to enter the tournaments regardless of the rules.
Yeah.
Regardless of the boundaries, regardless of the horsepower, regardless of anything.
They're going to be
those
there no
50 or 60 are going to enter these tournaments. So I think, and I don't know how to do it. I have some ideas, but I think the key is to get these. We're marketing right now to the wrong people. We're marketing to people that are going to fish it. We need to market to the people who right now are not fishing it.
Exactly.
So how do we do that?
Well,
and those are the thought processes that we try to think about.
This is something that we've talked about before, is the fact that if you guys have a tournament like that, right, and we know who's going to be there, you might get a few that show up to one or the other, but, you know, in order to recruit people, you've got to bring them into it to make it worth their while. And that's why we talked about, even if you did a one-day tournament where you had, you know, Ron fishing with somebody he's never fished with, you know, it's a draw tournament and it only costs, you know, $150, $200 or something like that.
Absolutely, man. I've been hoping for that for years.
Yeah, because
like
to be, yeah, kind of, maybe I wouldn't say pro-am, because, you know, maybe that
boat or non-boater.
Yeah. And, you know, because here's the thing is, what is getting a lot of the younger people into the fishing game? It's not walleye, it's bass. Well, how are they doing that? A lot of it's going through school. They have school clubs. You know, they go out and they bass fish tournaments for their school. Well, you don't get that for walleye, so that exposure isn't there.
I 100% agree with you, man, on that. I love fishing with my normal partners, Dan, Terry. We fish, but everybody that fishes together has a boat, pretty much. So let's break them up. I have always wanted to see that happen out here, where we get a random, you can call it whatever you want, if you call it a co-angler or whatever. But I really think that's the way we need to go.
But break the teams up, you're saying?
I do, because that way, look, we all want to get better. We all want to learn different tactics. And typically, the two team members have their own boats. They just fish together because they, for whatever reasons, are good friends, or they fish together good, or, whatever it might be. But I've always, just like the National Walleye Tour does, why we can't at least talk about it and say, because they don't have any problem getting 120 boats into their tournaments, and the pros are paying a lot, $2,000 to enter, and the co's are paying 500. But we want to get more people involved out here. So I really think it, like Lonnie was saying, I don't know if he just said it just now, but in the past, like maybe having one tournament a year where we experiment with that and mix it up a little bit and draw a co-angler that has a lesser entry fee versus the pro, like the NWT does. I really think that would be, every time I've done an NWT tournament, I've became friends with the co that fish with me. Matter of fact, one of them is one of the top dogs in NWT right now, Ben Teets. I think he's like in the eighth overall in Angler of the Year. Heck of a fisherman. But, mixing it up like that, brings more people into it. So if I had no clue how to catch walleye, there's no way I would enter a tournament. But if I saw that I could enter it and maybe draw Mike or Todd on Banks Lake or Kettle or Moses, where I know they're going to do good, or Potholes, those guys always do good in those lakes. I'm going to enter it because I want to get possibly drawn with one of those guys. So I really think we should at least think about that at some point, maybe having one tournament a year where it's a pro-am. Don't get all tied up in the titles of he's the pro and he's the amateur. It's just
a voter, non-voter.
Right, whatever that might be, but have a $500 entry or whatever the number is for one guy, and a $100 entry for the other guy.
Well, let's quit talking about it. Let's do it. Let's actually try some of these ideas, because we all see it. The numbers are dwindling. There's like Todd said it. We've talked about this till we're blue in the face. It's the same core group of guys. Whether it's say there's 50 guys, and in any given tournament you're going to have 35 to 40, 42 boats. This guy's got a graduation, or this guy's whatever. The same guys are going to be there over and over. We need to market to these other people. Let's put one together. Whether it's even though it's outside our regular circuit, let's put it together. Whether it's a fish donkey, or we get a volunteer to run a tank, let's try some of these different ideas. Ken and Todd have been roundhousing some great ideas on what it would take to bring back the folks at Kettle and make it a community event again. I have a passion for Banks, obviously. Fishing with the Rovenios and the Gordon Steinmetz for those years, and Banks is very very personal and very passionate to me. I'll work with you on something on Banks, but let's get guys together instead of one group like the CRW. Instead of those guys trying to run everything, and it's tough, like they've mentioned. They're spreading themselves out there thin. Let's everybody take a body of water. Whoever's passionate about this given body of water, let's see what we can do. But instead of talking about these ideas, let's actually get out there and do them. Because we don't get a tournament here in a couple of years, and then.
Well, the nice thing that I would like to see is.
What's that?
So one thing I'd like to see is we've got six tournaments right now. Big tournaments.
I think seven. I think seven.
So what if you were to take maybe one less of those?
Seven.
And add, let's say, 3 or 4 smaller tournaments, and you can put them in the same body as a water. But and I will say one thing, Chad, about your angler co-angler. I think if you took the people that had the boats now, like, hey, I'm going to draw and I'm going to go fish with Chad. Well, I think that's maybe a drawback to getting people into it, that we need to get into it, because now I'm fishing with you. Although it would be awesome, you know, I think what we need to do is get people in that don't fish.
Angler, and you're already a tournament angler. All you've done is
right. So we need to get people in that maybe don't do that. So, you know, you could.
Great idea.
I think if you had more events, and some of them were less cost, angler co-angler, I think you'd get a bigger exposure, and you could go through the social medias. You can advertise in other places, you know, and get that, because what do the bass guys have? They have tournaments every weekend.
And there's zero payout in a local bass club tournament. There's zero payout. They're doing it because it's fun. I mean, they're getting that exposure. They're not even making enough back to hardly even pay their entrance fees, because there's just nothing there. But it's all fun for them, and there's such a driving force on TV and social media about bass fishing. But you're right about that 100%. I mean, the kids are just bass fishing. Well, I'll throw out a shout out to Al. You know, Alan Carr. He drove all the way to Seattle last week, and he had an appointment over there. But a buddy of ours' kid, absolutely nuts about bass fishing, just turned 16. Al drove him back. He's hanging out with him all week, and Al's going to fish the tournament next weekend with the kid. 16-year-old kid, never fished a tournament, but he is absolutely over the top for bass fishing. So Al's going to introduce him to walleye fishing.
Yeah, and you know the other thing too.
Doing that, you mentioned someone's going to chat, or one of you guys mentioned that someone's fishing with their kid here next weekend, and Weech is going to fish with his son up there. That's awesome. Yep. I know there's a lot of guys fishing with kids, and we need more of that. Whatever it takes to get these kids involved. And if it's a pro-am or boat or non-boat or whatever deal, like Chad's mentioning, whatever, I'm in, but we got to do something.
I think we also need to get to the point where people don't realize, or that they realize, that walleye fishing isn't just throw a worm on, crawler harness, and you're pulling it behind the boat. You know, if you want to bass fish for walleye, you can do that. You know, you can treat it just like you're fishing for bass.
Right there, because I hear that from so many guys that I work with. They're like, oh yeah, were you out there just, what was it, chartreuse? Was it one bead or two beads? Did you go 1.2 or 1.3? It's like, I don't even bring worms. It's just, you got to get the mentality out that it's not just a boring old man fishing thing. It's however you want to fish for them. If that's how you want to fish for them, great. The best worm pullers cash checks every single week. Sure. But we need to get that mentality out to this younger generation that, hey, you want to bass fish for walleye, go out there and bass fish for walleye, and you'll have a great time.
Oh yeah, you can power fish for them just like you can for bass.
Whatever it takes to get these guys involved, but I'm into whatever it takes to help.
It's tough, man. We're seeing tough times with what it costs to run up to tournaments. I mean, you guys won the tournament, and I'm guessing you probably pocketed $1,000 a piece. You know, so it's tough. I mean, financially, you're definitely not doing this to win. You know, to make any money. When you're paying $6-7 for a gallon of fuel, and I'm guessing that if anybody plans on running the Spokane arm, I'm guessing that fuel pump is going to be around $7 a gallon. So congratulations. That's why I have no problem if somebody wants to run down there, go right ahead. You know, that's just, if you want to take that gamble and spend that money, then more props to you, but you don't need to. And it's just tough right now. So we're facing a nearly impossible equation to try to solve right now with paying $6 a gallon for fuel, having to get, trying to coerce people to come up to Kettle. So we're losing 10% of our field, our core group right now, just because of that. So it's tough right now. So we got to try to find other avenues to try to get more people into it right now. And if that's a pro-am type event, because I don't see gas suddenly dropping down back to $3 a gallon anytime soon. No. We're just gonna have to live with it for a while.
And I don't think there's any right answer that's going to solve. We're not going to magically have a 125 boat tournament again. But if everyone, like Ken had a great idea, Cook, you think this particular thing will bring guys to the tournament, then you do that for this given tournament. We'll see how it turns out. I'm going to do this for that same tournament. Todd will do that, or whoever. Let's just see if we can get these people coming back and get some feedback from them. But there's not going to be one single thing that brings people back. But if 10 guys get together and 10 different ideas are implied or, implemented into a tournament, and it brings back 10% of the field one year, and then that next year brings back another 10% on top of, if we can start bringing these people, it's not going to be an overnight deal. And it's not going to be any miracle medicine, but if we can do something to start bringing these people back to the tournaments, whether it's social media exposure, whether it's the Pro-Am deal or boat or non-boater, whether it's drop tournament fees. But, I had the idea, drop some tournament fees down, like you were saying, Lonnie. It's tough to tell a guy, hey, you want to learn, but hey, you got to fork over the money. But what if I sat on the phone and called 10 different sponsors saying, hey, you know what, you have a great product. I need some money, I need some product, I need some money to enter, to add to the prize pots and say, okay, there's going to be a guaranteed prize pot, whether we have these $500 buy-ins or whether it's $100 buy-in. If we still have the same payouts, it makes it easier for a guy to say, well, yeah, I'll roll the dice, I'll fish this weekend. And so maybe it takes a guy sitting on the phone and begging for money for the payouts. 10 companies giving a couple $100 each adds quite a bit of money to it. Whether it's earlier or later, we've heard earlier or later blast off times, borders, boundaries, live bait, no live bait, Pro-Am, no Pro-Am. There's a million reasons why it doesn't work, but until we start trying to do something about it, it's going to be the same answer every damn tournament. Where's all the guys? Well, nobody did anything different. And then,
yep.
Chad, you put on enough tournaments during the Fish Donkey, and I ran banks for a couple of years there. There's no right answer. No matter what I did on the stage, I got someone harping at me.
When you're running a tournament, it's a terrible. If you want to fish the tournament, it's an absolutely horrible no-win situation to try to run it. So for the last 2 years were difficult, and it was difficult for me. But I like fishing, so I kind of took the reins as much as I could and did what I could. And those guys, the CRWAA, if we didn't have what we have right now, I probably wouldn't even live in Washington State. I mean, my fun for the year is fishing against you guys and hoping I can figure my stuff out and beat you. So if that wasn't there no more, I would go right back to North Dakota, Minnesota right now. And I'm seeing it drop every year. So we need to, even though we're facing horrible situations right now to try to get more people involved, we got to do something to change it up a little bit. And honestly, when Lonnie and I talked about bringing this podcast back, it was, one of the main reasons was like, look, we got to get the guys that are good at fishing like you guys, because you just won Banks Lake and you've had tons of top finishes. We got to open up a little bit, and we're not BSing on how we're fishing. These guys that are winning these tournaments aren't typically doing your traditional style of walleye fishing. They're doing something completely different, and it's not easy. Casting all day in multiple spots versus putting a rod in your rod holder and driving around. So, but if you want to get better at fishing for walleye, there is not a better avenue than jumping in with this group. And it might take a year to learn how. For instance, there's a group of Montana guys that have been coming up for the last 2 years, Jeff McElwain and some of his friends. And he struggled last year. Well, this year he's doing very good. He's in the top 10. Actually, all three of his groups members are right up there in the top 10. So they went from bottom of the pack in 1 year to top 10 of our group fishing the tournaments. And I would assume that's because they have been learning from everybody, watching what they do, respecting what they're doing, and then the next year's jumping in to the fire and say, all right, I'm going to figure out how Todd is catching these fish casting, how Mike is catching these fish casting, because it obviously works, So you have to have the drive, I guess, if you want to get better, to jump right in. And you will learn, period. I mean, it's none of us are the best. We all learn every year. I've learned stuff this year, new tactics, new methods. it's kind of a training ground. And then if you really want to step up and go fish with the big boys, you can be confident enough to drop a lot of money and go fish with Corey Springle, John Hoyer, and salivate because you know that you can beat them. Everything has to go your way, but you're not scared of beating Keith Gavias, Chase Parsons, all these top Max. You're not scared of them because you've learned over the last couple of years that why can't I go in and beat these guys? Nobody knows who I am. Nobody cares who I am. We know who they are. And it's the same thing with our group. I mean, we got guys that are pretty good at catching walleye. So some random person that enters our circuit and watches how a certain group fishes, they're going to learn. So it's kind of you can transition from just your normal fisherman to you can go right to if you're good enough, you can go right to the top of the pyramid just by observing how guys fish. I mean, it's all there for you. You just have to have the drive.
What are the numbers like on the Fort Pecks and the Devil's Lakes and what's the other one? Sakakawea. What are those numbers like on not the big dog tournaments that come there, but the Governor's Cup at Fort Peck? What are their numbers like? I know overall that they've got a waiting list. It seems like we went in 17, and again last year there was a waiting list. But what is it like this year with gas prices? Have you looked at anything this year? What are those numbers like? Are they
They're not having any problems.
Yeah. Well, when you've been there, we were so blown in 17 when we went to that Fort Peck tournament. We were blown away by the way the tournament was run. It was the best, not just great, phenomenal fishing. That was one thing, but the way that tournament was won, it was insane. To have the National Guard meet you at the top of the hill and walk your boat down and launch, and you got all the guardsmen there launching your boats, and then the loudspeaker Pledge of Allegiance, a howitzer, a cannon blasts you off, and then the way the weigh-in is done, and the way all the weigh boats, which is it's an inch to weight conversion thing, that was fantastic. But then you go to the park at night, and the entire town is there. It is an event. Beer gardens and live music and places for the kids to go so the parents can go and have a burger or whatever they're serving, and it's an event.
We got to get some big name sponsors
because it's
involved to try to create that.
I interject. The Fort Peck, or what town is that? There's Fort Peck and Glasgow. That's something we've talked about a lot too. The Chamber of Commerce, it's a huge that tournament, the Montana Governor's Cup, is a huge revenue stream for them. And I think that's something I don't want to get all long-winded about it, but I don't care which one you look at, Coulee City or Grand Coulee for Banks, right? Kettle Falls for the Governor's Cup, Moses Lake for whatever it may be. They have the community at Fort Peck and Glasgow, Montana for the Montana Governor's Cup. They have the community behind them, and that Chamber of Commerce is heavily involved. In other words, there's revenue for them. For them to promote that tournament, they are getting revenue. And that's something that I see with our tournaments. And again, I thank God for the CRWA. I thank God for you, Chad, during COVID. Stepping up. Absolutely. I'm never going to say anything bad about anyone who takes these tournaments on. But like Mike's saying, it's a huge event. Half the teams at that Fort Peck, at that Montana Governor's Cup, are husband and wife or father-son. They're going for big money, kind of what you guys were talking about before.
But it became an event to them, that they look forward to.
Exactly.
Like we all do. They look forward to it all year. That's the weekend I get to go fish with mom and dad and do this or fish. I look forward to. We all look forward to it. Last year we got to go as a group and hang out, and the Kens and Rons and Don and Brett and me and Todd, and I look forward to it all year. In that event, it's huge. You drive down to that park and you see all the boats and all the people, and you're just like, wow, this is a walleye tournament.
I just think you have a lot of the community. I guess to sum up my thought, and I don't know how you do it, but they have a lot of community support, and from the Chamber of Commerce and the municipalities there. And Chad's been to a lot of big ones. I haven't been to that many of them, but that is the kind of the key thing I saw, the difference between what we're doing up here and what they're doing there. And just what Chad said, they have a waiting list. I don't care what the fuel price is. I don't care what the hotel price is. There's a waiting list. And it's because it's an event that a lot of people want to go to. And how do we make ours that way? You know, that's my.
It all comes back to like we are the redheaded stepchild in Washington State for walleye fishing. And granted, it's tough to pull a guy from the Midwest to drive out here, especially now. So I don't. There's no simple answer to that at all. I mean, it's and a lot of those guys that do come out here, you know, they're going against guys that have, you know, a lot of time on the water. So it's tough even for a pro to come out and beat guys like you. It doesn't matter how good you are. I mean, you've got time on the water. So, you know, we got a lot going against us to try to pull those guys out here. I certainly don't have the answers on that.
Yeah, but you know, I don't think you'd have to pull those kind of people out. I think what you know, Todd and Mike are maybe alluding to is the fact that, you know, how many people have reached out to City Commerce and say, hey, you know, what can we do to make this a bigger event? Not just because of the fishermen, but let's try and make it a community event.
Right.
You know? And maybe starting at that level, and then it can grow. And then who
Right.
knows, you know, maybe we do get people from, you know, Montana and North Dakota or something like that once they see how big it's gotten, but it's got to start small somewhere. And the first step is reaching out to these people.
And I did during COVID, and they weren't interested. And it was understandable, I guess, because of the, you know, we couldn't, like the first year we did the tournament, you couldn't fish with someone unless they were a household member. So, I mean, I can understand their pause and like, yeah, we just, right now it's not a good time. We got to get through this BS that we're dealing with right now. You know, we're never going to get more participation until 2020 and 21 are in the rearview mirror. But you're right. I mean, we got to get these commerce, you know, cities involved to get more local, because there really is no advertising, no radio. And if you wanted to buy a radio ad, that just comes out of the prize pot. So, and a lot of sponsors right now are not able to give sponsorship money out. So, I mean, we got everything going against us right now. So what we have right now is the core group going against each other, and basically just, you know, that's it. I mean, we don't have
That group. I mean, they're the best. They're the best. I mean, this core group that's fishing the walleye circuit in Washington, you know, you can take that core group and go compete anywhere.
right.
They're sharp sons of, I mean, every one of us out there, every one of you guys, they're all, you know, you can't tell me that we couldn't take this core group and go compete anywhere. You know,
Every state has a great group, you know, top whatever percent you want to throw the number at. And this state's no different. We got guys that can go back in the Midwest and fish.
All right, guys. Well, we went a little bit longer than what we usually do, but it was good conversation. So we look forward to seeing you guys up at Kettle, and best of luck to you.
Yeah, we'll bid you up. I know I'm going to bid you guys up at the Calcutta.
I'm going to bid you up, Chad. So.
Right.
Go right ahead. I don't care. We need more money in that pot. So Calcutta is a great thing. I wish we actually did that in every tournament, because and that's one thing that brings in more of the locals, because a local can buy a team. You know, I wish we did, you know, and actually the prize pot in the Calcutta is typically as good as the, you know, winning the tournament. So yeah.
All right, fellas.
Doing this podcast,
thank you guys.
Get the word out.
Yeah, anytime. Hopefully it won't be the last.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you guys Friday.
All right, have a good one.